The movie begins with Caroline reading a story for her patient, but after a while the patient is dead. After she announces her boss, she prepares files and pictures of her patient in a box. Later, she discovers boxes of personal items from other recently deceased patients tossed out like trash in a dumpster. This is too much for her, and she decides to leave the hospice for a role as a personal care assistant. Meanwhile, Caroline is at the bar with her friend Jill. She shows her the interview she is going to have and tells her that one of her patients is dead. She looks frustrated by the work of the hospital she used to work. She tells Jill that they are not caring about their patient, and she decides to leave her work. Then later at the bar, they start dancing together. Caroline heads to an isolated mansion on the edge of a swampy bayou in New Orleans. There she meets the Devour family, including Ben, who's in poor health, and his wife Violet, who immediately seems wary and skeptical of Caroline because of the place Caroline came from. Luke steps in, calming things down and nudging Caroline to accept the job. Drawn by Ben's mysterious condition, Caroline agrees and settles into the mansion, ready for her new role. Afterward, Caroline heads to the mansion to start her new job. She makes a quick stop at a shabby gas station in the middle of nowhere. The place has a few odd touches, like a trail of red dust scattered along the doorway and animal bones hanging like decor, giving it a vibe straight out of a spooky story. Then she panicked when she saw an old woman holding a kid. She paid the bill and moved away quickly. Caroline arrives at the mansion, settles in, and quickly spots something strange. Ignoring that, she goes to Ben's room. She reminds him who she is. Then he unexpectedly holds her hand strongly, which makes her confused. Then he lets her go when Violet comes. Then Violet, the lady of the mansion, firmly insists that they stay gone, showing Caroline the house to help her navigate the vast old house. Violet hands Caroline a skeleton key that should open any door. Caroline begins looking after Ben, and one afternoon she brings him out to the garden, where Violet is already waiting. Violet casually tells Caroline to fetch some seed packets from a box inside the house. As Caroline heads inside, she spots a door shifting slightly, though it remains shut. Curious, she attempts to unlock it with the skeleton key, but suddenly another door slams shut behind her, even though no one else is there. Caroline hurries back outside without delay. Caroline asks Violet about it, and she simply says she's never managed to get that door open herself. In the evening, Caroline is asleep but wakes up when she hears a strange sound from the other room of the house. She immediately goes upstairs to check for Ben. Then she doesn't find Ben in his bed. Then she discovers that Ben has somehow crawled onto the roof outside his bedroom window, leading to a brief but painful fall to the ground. The next day, Luke comes to check what happened. Then Caroline shows him bed sheets that is written the previous day, but the bed sheets are clean and nothing is written. Then their conversation shifts to Caroline's father, and she tells him that he is dead, but she didn't even know that he was sick. Then she tells Luke that Ben was asking for help with a look and touch, but Violet suddenly interrupts them. Caroline finally manages to get inside the locked attic room and is startled by what she finds. An assortment of strange, ritualistic, and scary items clearly meant for magic. Unexpectedly, Violet comes to the attic room, but Caroline manages to hide, and Caroline finds the mystery mirror. Curious about what she's stumbled into, Caroline takes the old record titled The Conjure of Sacrifice. She sneaks it back to her apartment. Violet spots a mirror in Ben's room and, furious, tells Caroline there are no mirrors allowed. Caroline, unfazed, then asks about the attic room. After a heated exchange about the strange happenings in the house, Violet opens up to Caroline about its grim past. Years ago, the mansion was owned by a rich white family with two black servants, Papa Justify and Mama Cecile, who practiced hoodoo. During a lavish party, guests stumbled upon Justify and Cecile performing a ritual with the family's children in the attic. Enraged, the crowd dragged the servants outside, lynched them from a tree, and burned their bodies. Violet explains that Justify had uncovered a powerful hoodoo spell known as the Conjure of Sacrifice, and since their deaths, she believes their spirits haunt the house. Meanwhile, Caroline decides to test Violet's claims. She takes out a compact mirror and holds it up to Ben's face while bathing him. The moment he glimpses his reflection, he's visibly terrified, confirming to Caroline that there is something mysterious. Caroline goes to the woman who sells magical items. She describes Ben's strange predicament and receives a spell that should undo any curse or hex cast on him. Later, she goes to Jill and explains everything to her, but in reverse, Jill doesn't appreciate what Caroline is doing. Afterward, Caroline performs the ritual, and to her surprise, it works. Ben begins to speak, pleading for her help. But before they can get any further, Violet barges in, bringing the moment to an abrupt halt. Determined to make her case, Caroline brings Luke back to the rural gas station she had visited before. This time, she recognizes the red dust sprinkled across the doorway. It's red brick dust, a common hoodoo practice meant to ward off enemies. Meanwhile, Caroline encounters an old woman who's listening to vinyl records that look eerily similar to those in the Devour attic. Curious, Caroline asks her if she's ever heard of a record called The Conjure of Sacrifice. At the dinner table, Caroline and Violet eye each other warily. Caroline barely touches her food, keeping a close watch. When the lights suddenly go out, Violet stands to fetch a candle, giving Caroline the chance to slip some medicine into Violet's bottle. Soon after, it starts affecting Violet, making her lose control. Just as Violet is about to protect herself with a magic circle, Caroline intervenes, causing Violet to faint. Seizing the moment, Caroline drags Ben to her car and attempts to drive away. But Violet regains consciousness and begins chanting spells that somehow prevent the car from passing through the locked gates of the property. With Violet now armed and approaching with a shotgun, Caroline scrambles to hide Ben in a nearby tool shed. Caroline slips into a rowboat and paddles through the swamp, eventually making it to the other side. She manages to hitch a ride back to New Orleans and heads straight to Luke's apartment, hoping for help. Just as she arrives, the phone rings, and it's Violet on the other end. While Luke steps away to take the call, Caroline quickly searches his desk and is shocked to find a skeleton key from the mansion. Before she can react, Luke appears behind her, and before she realizes what's happening, he's strangling her until she loses consciousness. When Caroline comes to, she finds herself bound and gagged, trapped in the back of Luke's car as he drives her back to the Devereaux mansion. Upon arrival, Violet is waiting for them, scolding Luke to be gentle and not scratch her up any more than she already is. They pressure Caroline to reveal where she's hidden from Ben, and when Violet leaves to retrieve him, Caroline seizes the chance to break free from Luke's grasp. She bolts to her bedroom, where she's already spread a protective line of brick dust across the doorway, hoping it will keep her pursuers at bay. Caroline frantically seals herself off in the mansion, pouring red brick dust across every doorway to keep Luke at bay. Just as she's gaining some control, Violet appears, shattering her jar of dust. Violet tumbles down, landing with a sickening crunch that leaves her with broken legs. Taking advantage of the moment, Caroline grabs the phone and dials for police, desperately calling for help. Then she calls her friend Jill, frantically explaining that she's in danger at the Devereaux mansion. But before she can say much, Violet, somehow having dragged herself back up the stairs despite her injuries, appears and cuts the phone cord. With Luke blocking her escape from the house and Violet closing in upstairs, Caroline dashes into the attic. Desperate, she uses a schematic she grabbed from Violet to draw a protective circle around herself. Following the instructions, she carefully places sulfur, chalk, blood, and hair to complete the setup. Just as Caroline completes the circle, Violet drags herself into the attic. Caroline, feeling protected within the circle, is startled when Violet mocks her. Violet reveals a mirror and moves toward Caroline, who, panicked, begins repeatedly saying that she doesn't believe. Suddenly, both women are flung back by a powerful force. When they regain consciousness, it's clear something has drastically changed. Caroline now speaks with a calm, calculating tone. She sounds just like Violet. And Violet was never actually Violet at all, but the spirit of Cecile, who had taken over Violet Devereaux's body long ago. Luke, too, is no longer himself, but is possessed by Papa Justify. The next day, Jill arrives, answering Caroline's earlier call, just in time to see them being wheeled out. Caroline, in Violet's body, looks at Jill, desperate to tell her the truth, but she's hexed into silence. Meanwhile, Cecile and Justify, now in the young bodies of Caroline and Luke, sending Jill along with them in the ambulance. The film ends with Caroline, now trapped in Violet's elderly body, being taken away in an ambulance along with Ben. Did this story spook you out? Let us know in the comments below. For more horror movie recaps, subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next one. Fear awaits you.